Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're absolutely delighted to be with you. I'm Dr. Tiffany Vora. I am the Vice Chair for Digital Biology and Medicine at Singularity University, and also a fellow at the Geotech Center for the Atlantic Council, where I'm looking at how technology and policy come together for people, prosperity, and peace. Now, speaking of people, prosperity, and peace, today our conversation is going to be a really great one, I think. It's going to be about how space research is benefiting us today here on Earth and how it will continue to benefit us in the future. I'm joined today by 4 panelists from all around the world. We're going to start off by having each of them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about the work that they've done that has brought them here today. And then from there, we'll be taking questions from each of you. Don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A. We're going to have those coming to our panelists throughout our conversation, so don't save them to the end. And let's get started. Jason, would you like to start us off today?
Happy to. Thank you so very much. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Great to be on this panel. I am currently the NASA program executive for the SBIR and STTR programs. So that stands for the Small Business Innovation Research and the Small Business Technology Transfer programs. These are amazing programs. NASA in FY20 awarded over $150 million to over 500 small businesses across the United States to develop technology for the space mission. It's been a real privilege to be back at NASA. This is my 3rd time at the agency, so I've been in and out. Started some businesses of my own, consulted, and really am eager to be able to lead this program where we have an amazing team that is out working with our subject matter experts within the space program to figure out what the technical challenges are that we can apply small business ingenuity to and provide funds to American business across the US. Super exciting when I think about what's possible. We have 8 small businesses that are actually on Mars with the Perseverance rover right now. So there is a real opportunity for small business entrepreneurs to be a meaningful part of the space program. Why don't I leave it at that? Really eager to dig in and have conversation with the panelists and answer a wide-ranging set of questions I hope we'll get from you in the audience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Mohsen, would you tell us about yourself?
Thank you. And again, it's an honor to be here with you guys and sharing the platform and hopefully giving a little bit insight to what the UAE has been doing, a young country that is only 50 years old. So I'm part of the Space Center here in the UAE and Dubai's Mohammed the Space Center, working as a mission systems engineer. And my role has been changing depending on the phase we are. And just gaining experience as much as we can, knowing that this is the only and the first interplanetary mission and for the region. The knowledge that we needed to gain, how we got there, and hopefully it is something we can discuss here and how it's actually benefiting the UAE as a young country and also the region, and how we actually starting to see those benefits and how the whole mission, as the name hope, that's the name of the mission, to give hope to the young generation here, and hopefully the coming youth of the country and the region as well. I'll stop at that, and hopefully we can have a really fruitful and a good discussion here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Shahreen, tell us about your work.
Absolutely. I am Shahreen Reza. I'm the CEO of Astreas. We are the first commercial company that's focused particularly on astronaut nutrition and food in space. And so, Mohsen, I'm really excited to see UAE going up there because something that we champion is diversity. And food is very special because it's one of the elements that brings people together, regardless of what your race, religion, ethnicity, or geographic location is. And so to that extent, it's been quite interesting. We've had the opportunity to speak with many astronauts, and on our team, we have former NASA astronauts. Our chef has worked in 3-star Michelin restaurants. For us, it was really important to have a broad range. So everything from bone biologists to scientists who've been working on space life support systems. And for me personally, as an entrepreneur, the challenge that I found most interesting is when it comes to space nutrition, it's not just a matter of calories in, calories out for astronauts. It has been noted that over even short duration missions, about 20% of the food isn't eaten and enjoyed by astronauts. And at the end of the day, if you are only taking in 80% of the necessary energy requirement to function, it's okay for short periods of time. But when we're talking about deep space, long missions, it does become a serious challenge. And one of the core reasons is an astronaut must be at peak performance, both mentally and physically. In fact, astronaut training is more arduous than Olympic athletes who are training. So for us, we peel back the layer and understand what is it that poses this great challenge. And overwhelmingly, the answer has come back to flavor. There are quite a few obstacles when it comes to food tasting delicious in space. And so we really unravel that. And what we've realized is when you look at flavor, so much of what you're tasting is actually what you're smelling. And during COVID, we could understand that a lot of people said that they can't really experience flavor because they can't smell very much. So we dig into the science and understand how you can create food that is nutritious. And at the end of the day, when it comes to bringing that technology back on Earth, there are many challenges that could be overcome. And I'm looking forward to discussing that further on this panel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Lawrence, tell us about yourself and what you're working on.
Well, like Jason, I'm a three-time NASA or NASA contractor returnee. It's so great to see you guys so enthusiastic coming out. I remember when I was 25, 26 years old and I got into the program and I was just thrilled beyond belief. I've written several books about this. It's an amazing feeling when you first start out. By way of background, the very first job I had with NASA was designing a post-landing ventilation system on the command module to keep, quote, moonbugs from getting out and giving us all a disease, which we all well to know what that looks like now. And there were certain steps. I'm going to go through some slides to show you those steps that were taken way back when in 1967 as to how you could stop these moon bugs, which at the time I thought was a joke. I mean, moon bugs on the moon, please. Anyway, from there I went on to be on console at mission control for Apollo 11. I wrote a program that was able to predict the metabolic rate and consumable usage on spacesuits in real time, which was critical because you don't have a gas gauge. You can't tell you when you're out. And to time manage during an EVA on the Apollo missions was absolutely critical. So we had to know how much time was left, and we had to know it accurately. So built a human body model, built a spacesuit model, thermal model, and used that to elevate my status to get me on mission control. Quite a thing. And then after that, I worked on the space shuttle, which at the beginning I thought was, what's this? It's going up, it's going down, it's going up. We've been to the moon. Why are we doing this? So it took a while to realize just how significant that was. I was part of the team that put the tiles on. So I was intensely involved with 1,200 people on the tile and the Space Shuttle Columbia build. And then I left. I got all kinds of things happened, and I went into private industry. I worked on, believe it or not, a sports bra made from the spacesuit material and all kinds of interesting other crazy things. And then I got the urge to teach after a while, and I went to UC Berkeley to teach for a while. And that led to a postdoc. And that postdoc at NASA Ames was spacesuits for Mars. And it was the first serious look at spacesuits for Mars. And that kind of leads me to where I am now is what's so different about a spacesuit for Mars and what can it do in terms of improving technology and improving benefits on Earth quite a bit, as you're about to see. I've got a video to show you. So that's about 3 minutes of a 50-year career. Tough to capsulize, but there it is.
So should we go ahead and show your movie?
Oh no, that's going to be at the end. It's going to be in these slides. I'd love to show it now, but no, it has to fit in the slides that I'm doing, so you can see how it got to where it is.
Okay, so we're going to have a bit of a teaser there then. So Lawrence, you've done a great job of setting us up for the first question that I have for our panelists. And that is, we all know about Velcro, we all know about Tang, what are some other innovations that have come from the space industry back to Earth? Jason, given your work with SBIR as TTR, why don't you kick us off?
Great. Thanks so much. There is, I need to put a plug in because we've got a new public partnership with our tech transfer office. And so our spinoff.nasa.gov site, there's a section now with small business where you can go and see great stories of what small businesses have developed and then spun out into the marketplace. And so one of those, I don't know if y'all are familiar. It's been quite some time that we've been talking about aerogels. Aerogel, super light material, thought to be able to use to capture stardust. Well, it turns out that it's an incredible insulation driving $100 million industry, small business connection right there. What is particularly exciting, I think, in this day and age, and I don't have the illustrious career that Lawrence does. When I left NASA the first time in 2001, it was driven primarily by the primes. And now you can see this renaissance in the space sector. Small sats proliferating the low Earth orbit, capturing data sent back down to Earth, where numerous people now have access to an ability to crunch on that data and come up with applications and solutions to the problems that we face. And so whether it's comms, instrumentation, small sats themselves, we've got small sat launch companies, like incredible what's happening in this day and age, 2021. And later tonight, the first private sector launch of all non-astronaut citizens flying. Amazing time. So I think check out the site. You can get into details. What I get so excited about is the opportunity that is possible now as the space sector has really cracked wide open and is limited, I think, really only by our imagination.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing up the issue of these satellites. I mean, I live in California. We have a serious fire problem. And I know that a lot of the fire mitigation and fire prevention work that is trying to make life livable for us here in California, let alone make it better, is coming on the backs of all of this space innovation and then the computation that back ends it. So wonderful. Thank you for that. Mohsen, you had mentioned about links with life in the UAE. What are you seeing about products and innovations or even services that are enriching life where you live?
Yeah, so I mean, if I try to maybe link it to, what space has done for the UAE in a specific, we come again from a region that it's, when you look at the map, we are not in the friendliest neighborhood, where the youth, the option that they have, it's not here. The options, if you wanted to be inspired and be into innovation, unfortunately, back when I was a student back in school, we had limited options. And I think it got clear to the UAE's government that, okay, it's time to change that. And it's time to, inspire the youth and to stop the immigration of the young nation or the young youth that we have here, the smart ones, and going, abroad when we can actually try to have a facility for them here, right in the region. So that's the starting of the Mars mission, the Emirates Mars mission, and that's the name. It was assigned to hope, bringing hope back to the region, and showcasing that if a country as young as the United Arab Emirates is able to do something like this in 50 years, like the country's only 50 years, then it should be done by all the countries, if that makes sense. And we understood the limitations that we had. We understood where the knowledge is needed, and understood that partnership is really important as well. And that is why we were partnered with 3 universities in the US to basically teach us and do the knowledge transfer and mainly, get this going. And that was the beginning of this exploring deep space. And from that, I think the country and the government saw the benefits of exploring Mars or exploring space in general, and it started the initiative of the human space flights. And we have astronauts now, and that we have, I think, a pool of four astronauts, 2 that have been fully trained, 2 more that are recently being trained. We have the first female astronaut as well that got assigned. And the impact that we see now is that the mind shift that we have from the students, from the young generation, again, as I mentioned, the kids, they want to know what they need to do to be able to be part of this. They want to know what they need to study. Science previously was not an interesting field for many university students, because you would normally end up just being a teacher and there's nothing else for you to do. Versus now you get to be able to have a good impact and real research that on things that previously was not an option. The mind shift, I think it's something you would see on the long term, but we started seeing that. And also when it comes to the economy, if I want to talk about the economy, how this mission itself has brought in companies in the UAE to be able to support such missions as well for the future, as a follow-up mission on the different missions that the Space Center has. So it's truly, the space it's a really unique and great place here in the UAE. We have a ministry that is taking care of science and technology, with the space being one of the main things that they're working with. So we understood how important this is, and we're making sure that we continue. And on the long term, the UAE has a vision of they call it the Mars City 2117. It's something not for me, it's for my kids and grandkids probably, but it's just how the serious the government is on laying out a 100-year plan. It was back in 2017 when this plan was there, that by the year 2117, we want to have a colony on Mars. The end goal, it's the colony, but it's also having the steps and what should we fill in the gap to be able to, in 100 years, to reach that place or that goal.
Well, I definitely love this idea of long-range thinking, moonshot planning, and backcasting to figure out what do we need to do when in order to hit this really great goal. Thank you for sharing all of that. There's also a thread that I want to pull on, Mohsen, that you mentioned, which is this idea of diversity and inclusion. And Shahreen, the other day, you and I had a conversation about how we have perceived as women and as people of color, this whole innovation space and this industry opening up. Could you share a few of your thoughts of how you think the space industry is benefiting life on Earth from this kind of DEI and innovation entrepreneurship lens? You are muted, my friend.
Sorry about that. I would love to share this. I do have a quick question for Mohsen, if I may. Two quick questions, if I can piggyback one off of the other. One was a question with regard to the 3 universities in the US that you're engaged in. I would love to know about that. And the second is with regard to the idea of a colony in Mars. I know that colonialization has had quite an impact, particularly when we look at what's happened to the Middle East due to the British colonization. And so when we reverse it and look at colonizing Mars, what do you think of it politically? Because the word colonization hasn't had the best connotation when we look at the histories of places like Africa, like the Middle East, like Asia. And so going into the future, what is the UAE's perception of colonization and what impact that would have in future civilizations?
Okay, for the first question, so the 3 universities mainly that we worked with, I mean, we had so many different science partners as well from the science communities, but the university that helped us develop the mission, University of Colorado in Boulder, was the main with their it's the laboratory that they have they're doing so many amazing space missions. And then we had for the instruments that helped us build the 3 instruments that we have. So one of them was, again, done with the same university in Colorado. The other one was the University of Berkeley in California. And the last one was Arizona's State University. Those are the 3 universities that we are working with currently as well. We continue having this partnership going on with them. we got done with the technical aspect when it came to designing and building things, and now the science team and understanding how you do your analysis on these data, the raw data that we get, and how to make sense out of it. It's still ongoing. For the second question, I mean, I don't know, maybe the word colony is not the best way we want to mention it. And maybe sometimes, not having English as the first language, probably that sometimes does make you lose or be lost in translation. But the whole goal of, the colony, let's say, is understanding it's a long-term goal, 100 years worth of a mission that in 100 years, when again, 2017, this was announced. What do we need? So the government wanted to know, what do we need to have to be able to, if this is a thing that's going on, and I think it all started when NASA, I think, said by the year 2050, there will be some sort of colony on Mars. And the UAE said, if NASA needs 50 years, we're behind, so let's give ourselves another 50 years to be able to catch up. That was the idea. So it is mainly, again, to just keep the public excited, to keep the students excited that this is serious. We're looking into this seriously. Whatever it means by colony, what do we mean by that? Is it, being able to understand other planets more, understand them to a point that it will help us. The end goal is to be on Earth, and the end goal is to protect Earth, and the end goal is to understand what happened if it was life on other planets, and how can we avoid anything bad that happened to those planets that can happen to Earth. So I think that is at least how I see it. I'm not sure if I answered what you're asking for exactly, but yeah.
For sure. And then when it comes to diversity, Tiffany, as you were alluding to, I think it's the most fascinating time going into the space race, because we are now in this new era where it's the commercial impact of the space race. And if anything, it's opened up the door for greater diversity. I love seeing women, like even on this panel, we're 2 women here. There's a great amount of representation. Dr. Shahreen Proctor is actually going up. We know her. And she is someone who is not your stereotypical representation of who's going out to space. I think for me, the greatest element of diversity is also that you have access to people who aren't necessarily billionaires. You are giving this opportunity for citizen astronauts to actually achieve this dream of going out to space. And when it comes to technologies and innovation and what has become relevant, I know that oftentimes people think of things like Tang, but Tang wasn't originally created in space. It was created on Earth, and then it went to space and it became famous, and people started drinking this awful orange beverage in the 1990s thinking they're drinking space juice. But in truth, when I look at the real technologies that have come about, it's inspiring, even from a female perspective. When I gave birth, my son was in the neonatal intensive care unit. I couldn't hold him for the first 3 days. And as he was having baby formula, I read into it, and DHA, ARA were actually created in space with scientists. And the scientists who created it from the 80s reached out to us at Astreas and was like, hey, we love the research you're doing now. And for me, that's really fascinating, because a lot of innovation that comes out of it, whether we're looking at baby formula that now has the enrichment that gives you the same fatty acids from breast milk for brain development. The other one is, it's called HACCP, Hazard Analysis for Critical Control Point. It's actually used by the US Food and Drug Administration to make sure that kitchens in restaurants are at the right hygiene level. And these are really critical points of innovation that are coming back. And right now, as we're looking at the next wave, we're looking at things like sustainability. How do you create meats? How do you have, cultivated meat being created in space? How can you have a zero waste solution in a closed loop system? So those kinds of conversation points are so critical, because living in California, we can see the forest fires. The Amazon is burning, and people think it's just because of the beef, but then the vegan diet doesn't realize that when you're heavily eating soy, when you're heavily eating avocado, what does that do to the forestry? So I think these dialogues are coming up, and there's a great mirroring between challenges we need to solve in space and how those challenges are actually on Earth's spaceship Earth at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Shahreen, thanks for sharing that information about baby formula. My son was a preemie as well, and boy, he had his share. So he's going to love to hear that. He's 10 years old now. I'll tell him that he ate astronaut food. That'll get him excited. Lawrence, what would you say is your favorite example of a technology, a product, and innovation coming from space to Earth and benefiting life here?
Well, I don't know if it's possible to skip to with a second or third slide on the presentation because I've been involved. In fact, I started a company in 1984 called Space Spinoffs. So if we go to the next one, next one, next one, next one. Oops, let's back up to the beginning because it looks like that slide is, oh, there it is. Go ahead, next one. Here you go. So what you're looking at are just a few of the benefits that many of you are familiar with: computers, integrated circuits, packaging, but you may not be familiar with the fact that exterior paint to keep spacecraft from overheating has found its way to exterior paint on houses. Medical breakthroughs, all kinds of medical breakthroughs. For 5 years, between 2001 and 2005, I was the Human Research Program Experiment Manager, Human Research Experiment Manager at the Johnson Space Center for Human Life Science Experiments. So I'm very familiar with nutrition as well as immunology, as well as gravity, all that stuff. There is just a whole plethora of stuff coming out of the ISS and medical breakthroughs that are just finding its way to all of us. We all know about GPS and insulators and conductors. There's a whole barrage of new methods of cancer research, including looking at cancer cells in 3 dimensions. The proliferation, how they grow in a test tube is not how they grow in your body. And you can actually see how they grow in your body by looking at a drum that was, it's called a I forget what the term is, biosensor, something like that. It was actually first flown on the STS-107, the Columbia flight. And some of, despite the horrible outcome of the Columbia flight, some of that data actually made its way back. And so the next one, protective clothing for extreme environments. So when I left NASA, I formed a company called Space Spinoffs with the purpose of seeing what kind of benefit for extreme environments could we get from astronaut suits. And all kinds of things came out of that. How you control body temperature with cooling headbands and portable cooling systems. Running shoes that pump heat out of your foot so you don't degrade the shoe, and also have athletic issues. There was a healthcare sports bra that was looking at older women who have trouble putting on bras because they have arthritis and they can't reach around the back. So how can you improve that by using technology? Most of us already know crop management, storm and weather tracking, Earth observations. This stuff is daily in our lives. Telecommunications, energy and water conservation, power management. You may not know about the next one, but NASA has a relationship with NASCAR, which is the sports, the car racing organization. And why do they have that relationship? Because there is no better place to accumulate data on G-forces that effect on the human body than what happens when a 3,500 pound car going around a track at 200 miles an hour goes airborne. And NASCAR has sensors in those cars. Those sensors have been shared and used in NASA computers to actually build the Orion structure, so it can withstand the kinds of forces, and also it's going to work its way into the human landing system for Artemis. And of course, you can imagine that benefit has also spun off through the aeronautics portion of NASA into airframes and your aircrafts. And obviously, it also goes into cars and the vehicles that you drive. So if you take a look at fatality rates in passenger cars over the last 50 years, they have progressively come down because we have the benefit of all of this expertise. So there are more benefits from the space program than I could talk about in the hour that we have. They just are endless. NASA, as Jason alluded to earlier, NASA has a magazine called Space Spinoffs. I think they still have it. That's how I first found out about this, because some of the stuff I was doing at home, I thought, well, maybe that's a good idea to get into that Space Spinoff magazine. And from there, everything took off. So there's an awful lot.
Thanks so much for sharing that list. Shahreen, go ahead.
I just really found it fascinating when you talk about NASCAR and the correlation between motorsports and the aeronautical industry. Before starting Astreas, I actually worked at Palantir Technologies, and we were working with Ferrari. And for me, it was transferring the knowledge from working with Ferrari and Formula One race car drivers into bigger automotive industries like Fiat Chrysler. But then you have the learning from the data from there, and you have parallel industries. So for us, we worked with Airbus and understanding what happens in flights. So looking at the space industry and then looking at big data, for me, it's really fascinating when you can see the parallel connections that you can draw from the data and how you can actually apply it. And I think that's really at the core of the conversation. You don't even know what knowledge comes out, but then when you look at space research, you are forced to consider constraints that aren't necessarily there for you on Earth, but then you can apply them to so many different industries. And for me, the fascination is there's such a pleasure and ideation when you think about astronauts, when you think about race car drivers, but then for that knowledge to have impact for everyone, whether you're flying in a plane, whether you want to be safe driving or safe eating at a restaurant, these are really elements that make it so important for the youth. And Mohsen, you talked about that, for the youth studying and why that education can become applicable whichever career you go into.
Yes, I completely agree. Well said. I'm definitely going to be spending a lot of time with my son today, pointing at all the things in our house that have come from space, and I'm telling you, he's going to love it. So, getting our kids excited about STEM and STEAM careers, this is a great way to do it because it's all around us. You know, we get this idea that space is really far away and somehow it doesn't impact our daily lives. But Lawrence, you just shared all these great examples of how that's not true, and how, as Mohsen was saying, we can be inspiring our future astronauts to be getting in at the ground floor and really grabbing that love. Now, all of you have actually raised this point about commercialization. And I want to just pull on that again for a minute, not about any particular commercial product or service, but how the act of opening up the space industry to, not just governmental organizations, but also these private organizations all the way down, Jason, as you've mentioned, to small businesses. How do we think that this process of commercialization in an abstract sense, how has that benefited life on Earth? Jason, do you want to kick us off there? What are your thoughts?
Sure thing. It's clear based on the incredible list that Lawrence shared that the space investment is, to your point, Tiffany, everywhere. You look around your house and there are connections to the space program. And I think there are two threads that I'd like to pull on. The first is the one that is around inspiration. And it is the art of the possible. And so the way that we design a future that is better is that we live in a world of possibility as opposed to resignation. And so the aspirational aspects of space enable us to enroll and bring more people in. And to the point earlier about diversity, it's like the opportunity to get fresh new ideas from people that haven't been participating provides a whole new window of opportunity as we look to our missions of exploration. And the opportunity now is we see a private sector that is really growing alongside NASA. And in the small business program in particular, part of our mandate is to ensure that the investments that we're making in these small businesses, that we are thinking about the potential for commercial success. It's not sufficient to only think about 1 or 2 units that would fly on a NASA mission, but rather we really do need to think about the implications that we have with the monies that we're investing to ensure that there is a burgeoning marketplace. And I think there are a couple of things that are really driving, and I talked a little bit about small sats, like the opportunity for universities, even high schools, to build spacecraft and actually get them launched and actually get the data through a ground station they can then play with, and incredible opportunity for opening up new futures because it has become more tangible, it has become more real. again, the art of the possible is where I really feel the program or space exploration has gotten to. And so I think we see this connection between the terrestrial human experience and the challenges of space exploration, and how working in that dynamic, to Shahreen's point, like has clear benefit for the challenges that we face here on Earth. And so I think we're going to continue, and as we look to the future, see more and more of this happen, because we're going to watch the private sector grow. We're going to see our ability to explore go further and further out into the solar system, and we're going to open up the funnel for more people to participate. And so for me, I think it is such an exciting time to be involved in this area, because the potential is really limitless.
Wonderful. Shahreen, go ahead.
I must say one thing. I'm a woman of color. I'm in Silicon Valley. Astreas is my second company. Our first company was Purified. It was a clean tech water company. We were using the byproduct of Scotch whiskey to decontaminate industrially polluted water. After that, I joined Planetary Technologies, and it's really what opened my eyes. I was working as their deputy head of global business, and then I was on their intelligence arm. So I had that opportunity to work with C-suite. And now that I'm raising funds, I have to admit what's become glaringly obvious in the private sector is there is quite a dearth of opportunity for women and for people of color. And so the height of investment historically was 2019, where 2.9% of the funding went to women. When it comes to people of color, it's a fraction. When it comes to women of color, it is literally a fraction of a fraction. And so while there is this amazing, ideation that there is so much opportunity in the private sector, if you look at small businesses, and if you look at how much of that money is funneling into those who are underrepresented, it is unfortunately a sad reality that not much has changed. And so my hope is that with the space industry, you can match the passion with this understanding that investment for women, investment for people of color does result in profit. And so one of my favorites was when I found out that Rihanna is the first billionaire businesswoman who is a woman of color and the richest singer, and yet she didn't make her money off of singing, she made it off of business. And so it's really drawing attention to what hasn't changed and what can change in the future. And Mohsen, that's why I love seeing, representation of different cultures as well, because we are loud and clear that it's time for change.
Wonderful. I'm going to build on that a little bit. We've gotten a question from Odelia in our audience. She wants to know, what do you think could be future inventions for space that could improve life on Earth? Mohsen, I'm going to do that one better. I'm going to give you a magic wand and infinite funding. So Mohsen, from your point of view, what would be a future invention, future innovation from space that would really revolutionize life on Earth?
Okay, I think the way I would answer this, I'll just build up based on what everyone said here, maybe just where Shahreen kind of ended. I think what I love about a space, before I talk about what invention or what we want to do, is I think it's one of the only fields that it brings people together. It is one of those fields that you don't care where Jason is from, where Shahreen is from, where Dr. Lawrence is from. Do you have the knowledge? Let's sit together, let's share, let's talk, let's build something for the same goal that we have. The International Space Station, it's the only place, I think, where people from different countries, different backgrounds, different religions sit together and, are able to work together for the same goal. To me, I think this is the beauty of a space. It's not, the inventions, the things that we do, for sure. Yeah, that is another goal, another main goal of being able to bring things to Earth that will be beneficial. I think Dr. Lawrence, I feel like I should be part of the audience listening to you guys. This is really interesting to me as well. Understanding again, I'm young in this field. I'm still learning more and more, but to me, again, as I mentioned, I think the knowledge that we are able to get, empowering the people and being able to sit down and talk with this panel here is what the space has brought to the UAE, at least, and being able to, discuss and talk and Also challenging my colleagues now from the US. We got to that level. So I think that is what I love about it. And that is what I would keep looking for. And the invention, if you ask me, I mean, whatever makes life a better place, whatever makes Earth a better place, that is the end goal to me. And it's not mainly about leaving Earth. I mean, maybe that's the stereotype is we want to leave Earth. But to me, no, let's see what we can do to save Earth and learn from the mistakes that we have done. And then let's see what can be done to avoid damaging it further.
So if I can summarize, perhaps unity of purpose is the innovation that we would wave our wand for and get people together all over the world. And Mohsen, I think you're right. We talk about that for getting off planet, but we're facing existential crises now from climate change, and yet we're still having trouble uniting around a common purpose. So I think that's lovely. And Artemis Westenberg, Mohsen, she agrees with you. She says space unites and equalizes. And I know for me, that's my favorite part of being in this field, is seeing people light up when they talk about the future and they talk about how they're going to make the world a better place. Lawrence, I was wondering if you would like to share those materials that you teased at the beginning of our session. What would you like to show us by video and on your materials?
I'd love to do that, and in answer to the question about how I view the future of space exploration helping us on Earth, that's what this is about. If we could pull up the slides, I can get into it pretty quickly. Okay, so let's start with the very first slide. Okay, improving life on Earth with space exploration, that's what it's about. Next one, we can pass through these benefits. So I want to ask you all a question that you probably have not thought about too much. Can pathogens enter through a spacesuit? And could they lead to an unknown pandemic? Now take a close look at this slide, the picture on that slide. That is Apollo 12 Alan beam on the surface of the moon. And if you see the envelope around his spacesuit, it's outgassing effluent onto the lunar surface. This violates forward and back contamination in space. We didn't know it then, but we certainly know it now. So let's go to the next slide. There's a history of being concerned about this. Planetary Protection, the involvement of the space community back in 1967. Article 11 of the Outer Space Treaty declared that all spacefaring nations must avoid harmful contamination resulting from the introduction of extraterrestrial matter. And that included forwards and back contamination. I'll show you some examples of how this was implemented. Next slide. So as I mentioned in the command module, when Apollo 11 sat down, there were filters in the post-landing ventilation system to keep anything that might have been brought back from escaping. The astronauts wore a biological isolation garment when they exited the hatch on their way to the Hornet, before then being on the Hornet put into a quarantine trailer, an Airstream trailer, and there you see President Nixon talking to the Apollo 11 crew. The crew was brought back to the Johnson Space Center and put in the Lunar Receiving Lab, which was designed specifically to keep contaminants from getting out. After 14 days, they were tested. And this has spun its way all the way to the present, where you see Perseverance being worked on by workers in white clean room outfits and sterilized before it sends it off to Mars. So let's continue. Next slide. So that kind of has inspired me to over a number of years now to start the Mars Suit Project. And the Mars Suit Project has the following goals: was to develop and build a spacesuit for Mars, and to use the Martian environment, and also to leverage steam resources with something called the Hypernet Paradigm, which I'll discuss in a minute, and to ensure planetary protection. That's a lot of goals built into a spacesuit, and I'm going to show you how we've been attacking that. So next slide. To do that, you really need to understand the history of Mars spacesuits, concepts from Mars spacesuits. They basically fall into 5 categories. Mechanical counterpressure, using materials to provide pressure instead of air. Space activity suit was a version of that actually was tested out. It was taken to a new level by David Newman, Dr. David Newman, in an MIT biosuit, which most of you have probably seen photos of or pictures of. NASA, for its part, has gone through evolutionary designs from the Apollo to the International Space Station. And now you're looking at the Artemis XEMU, which has been in the news a lot lately, many of you know. So these are the histories of suits that could work their way to Mars. So next slide. I'm going to tell you the reality. And by the way, the next session, which is about EVA, I want you to pay close attention to what you're going to hear. They're not going to talk about the reality I'm going to talk about, which is the fancy suits in the news today do not include a working portable life support system or PLIS. They are primarily intravehicular suits. The one on SpaceX uses an IVA suit. The one Boeing uses an IVA suit. The NASA Artemis suit does have a PLIS, but the PLIS has not been designed and is not suitable for Mars. All of these suits are either too heavy, too complex, too hard to get in and out of, or non-functional on Mars. And they do not consider planetary protection, just like the Apollo 12 suit, do not consider planetary protection. They are outrageously expensive, and trying to get a Mars, we call it an EMU. An EMU is a suit plus a life support system. That's like forcing a square peg into a round hole. This is not a fashion show. Next time you look at these suits and you say how cool that looks, you got to remember, it's not a fashion show. So unless we have significant breakthroughs, we have a problem. So what do you do about it next? The answer is use the Martian environment on Mars. Mars is a planet. It is not a moon. Its weather is diverse, just like planet Earth. It has cool, dry atmosphere. That atmosphere can be used to pressurize a suit, and it can be used to take waste from a suit, and it can be used to cool an astronaut. Its temperature is Earth-like, enabling layers. Think peeling in the Bahamas and adding layers in Alaska, and you have Mars. That is not the moon. On the moon, if you look at the sun, you're talking plus 250 degrees Fahrenheit. If you look away from the sun, the suit is minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit. You're looking at boiling and freezing at the same time. So I say use the Martian environment. That's all well and good. So how are you gonna do that? So next. The only way to do it is to start with a fresh sheet of paper, and the one we decided to do that with was something called the Hypernet Paradigm. So let me take you through that because it's important. It's a STEAM education at its best. So next slide. This is what the Hypernet Paradigm is. It's a university government industry synergy. It's driven by passion, not dollars, not big contracts, and not an old boys network. It's STEAM-focused and cross-disciplinary and inclusive. It is design, not exam-oriented learning. It's an iterative, evolved end product that combines virtual and in-person learning and rapid immersion tools and public participation. And it's been going on 10 years and counting in a pilot program. So let me show you how it works. Next. Let's take the Mars spacesuit. You want to design a spacesuit for Mars, a clean sheet of paper. The first thing you do is you break that suit down into functional elements. So here you see some of them: pressurization subsystem, thermal environmental control, materials, using in situ resources, sizing, trade studies, life sciences, sensor display, power systems, all that stuff, mission planning. The next thing you do is you combine these to make them simpler into what I call work packages. So go to the next slide. So here you see an example of how you combine all these elements into work packages. So where this really starts to take shape is the next slide. You form an organization. So now if you look at the darker red boxes, those are the work packages. So you assemble a team, various teams. The teams consist of university partners, industry partners, and government, NASA partners with public participation. These teams can be anywhere from a half a dozen to a dozen to many, many more than that. Each team is given a starting point for their particular work package, like pressure and thermal control might go to the Naval Academy and a minority university and a NASA element. And what happens is, let's just imagine this is a course. In semester one, you're giving a starting point and you come up with a report. So the notion is all of these reports are then funneled into a feedback loop. And if you look at how the slide goes, you see the feedback loop coming up, and it then goes into a lead guiding critique peer review process, where what happens is it's given a reality check, in other words, and it comes back down into the hopper and back into the same teams the second semester or the second time period. So imagine this is a machine. It's going through a loop, and each time it goes through the loop, there's an improvement. And the improvement is not meant to be in a month, 6 months. It's not a semester. It's not a year. It's 5, 10, 15 years. And as you go through this loop, you let the paradigm run, and the product evolves, and it matures. That's the idea of the Hypernet paradigm. So let me show you how we use this to develop a Mars spacesuit. Next slide. Doing this, we came up with a candidate called, over time, called the HDSD, Hybrid Dual System EMU, an integrated multidisciplinary approach driven by the Martian environment. If you want to find out more about it, there's a link below. So go to the next one. I want to show you some more about this. This is what it does. It's very unusual. The torso is pressurized by the Mars atmosphere. The helmet is pressurized by a completely separate oxygen system. Safety is provided from puncture protection because in a conventional suit, if you have a puncture, the entire suit is voided, including the oxygen in the helmet. You've got about 10 seconds of life. That's all it is. This enables you, because you have your oxygen is continually supplied and not sacrificed, because it's a Lexan hard helmet. You can take corrective action. Seconds go to minutes to actually do a preventive fix. This is a simple system. It's what we call an open, not a closed loop life support system. That enables you to do massive mass reduction. Current suits are up to 150 kilograms or more. That's way more than a person could walk around on a daily basis on the surface of Mars and expect to do useful work. By having an open loop system, you can downsize a lot of hardware. You can lop off almost 2/3 of the weight of the current suits and get down to 60 kilograms, which is about the limit that you can walk around and do an 8-hour job on the surface of Mars. One of the key things, it has removable thermal layers. Suits today are basically EVA suits. They're built like a thermos bottle. They go into deep space. They go into the moon. They have to withstand simultaneous boiling and freezing temperatures. The only way you can do that is to build a suit like a thermos bottle. You don't do that on Mars. You don't have those environments. You have a completely different environment. It's cool. So what you can do is you get cold, you put on layers, you get warmer, like on the equator where it can get up to 80 degrees, you take off layers. All these things, I'm just touching the surface of the design here. Finally, the last part, planetary protection. You must have barriers to protect the home planet. Next. How does the Mars suit do that? It's something we call BB, barrier to entry, barrier to exit. This particular suit, it's using the environment of Mars. It's using the CO2 atmosphere to pressurize the suit and to provide cooling. And then what you do is you pressurize the suit. You have a relief valve that exits that same gas. So it comes in, pressurizes the suit, goes out. Well, that enables you, because you have an inlet and outlet to the environment, that enables you to introduce viral filters at the suit inlet and viral filters at the suit outlet. BB is called barrier to entry, barrier to exit. That's how we can stop what happened on Apollo 12 and all the other suits that are out there. Next
Lawrence,
slide.
We've only got about 30 seconds left for your session here, and then we've got to wrap up. Could you give us the take-home message here for what you want us to take away from your experience with the suit design?
Let's just go to the one video. I want to do I've got that little time. I want to show you the video, and I'll show you where this is going for benefits on planet Earth. If you could pull the video up. This is a suit that's designed
so the first point of the suit is that it is easy to put on. It's very flexible. I can move, I can do anything I want. My air is being brought in through these vents, these fans, and it is directed by hoses up into the helmet area. You'll notice that the helmet does not get fogged. Normally, this helmet might fog up, and you wouldn't be able to see. Now, there's plenty of air that are flowing across the face area, the visor, and that prevents fogging. You'll also note that the visor is large and roomy. That's very important over using the suit for many hours. So now you can see, right now, the BB system, barrier to entry and barrier to exit functioning, barrier to...
The suit uses all the technology that we derived from the Mars spacesuit: barrier to entry, barrier to exit, elimination of face-to-face contamination. The purpose of it is to stop a pandemic. Now, how could it do that? It weighs less than a pound. It's very inexpensive. You're looking at the very first prototype of this suit. It's now at the point 6 months later where it's actually in a pre-production mode. It looks much more evolved than what you see. It's designed to stop bacteria and viral pandemics, including COVID, from getting in and out. Now, how can you use that to actually stop a pandemic? The vision is called rapid outbreak response. What happens with rapid outbreak response is the instant an outbreak is reported, a warehouse of these suits or fast shipment of these suits is sent to that area, and you draw a diameter around where that outbreak started. Those suits are provided, they are reusable, they're sterilizable, you can wear them for an entire 8-hour shift. You can actually wear them for days at a time. And what happens is they will not allow any COVID to get in or pathogens to get in. They will not allow pathogens to get out. If you happen to get into that suit and you happen to have a contagion, a pathogen, it will not get out, and you, after 14 days, will develop symptoms, and you can be isolated from those people wearing the suit who do not. We think this is a way to go to actually stop the pandemic using Mars spacesuit technology. To me, that is one of the biggest impacts we can have for the world, and we hope to have this out next year. And
thank you. Thank you for all of that. We are coming down to our last couple of minutes here in this session. So I'm going to ask Jason, Shahreen, and Mohsen to give me a tweet length response to this question. And the question is, what do you say to people who say we should not be spending money in space because we have enough problems here at Earth? What is the biggest thing you want them to take away from today's session? Shahreen, let's start with you. What's your tweet length response to that? Don't count characters, just go for it.
I was literally counting characters in my head. Life in space creates the inspiration to innovate on Earth.
Beautiful, thank you. Mohsen, how about you? What's your short wrap up?
On my private account, I'll say you're wrong. But on my public account, I would say, I mean, this is the only way where we get people from different countries, regions, and backgrounds to work on the same goal and same objectives, and where we learn to work together and live together.
Wonderful, thank you. Jason, what's your tweet length response?
Since I don't use Twitter, I might go over, but I would say that the problems we face here on Earth are systemic and they're human. And if we were to take 10 times the money that we spend on space to try to address the problems, we're not going to solve those problems. We're going to spend that money and it will be gone. And so rather than eat the seed corn of potential and possibility and exploration in the future, I would argue that it's paramount and absolutely critical that we spend this money because it does provide possibility. And it does enable a unification across the globe that's bigger than just a single human experience.
Okay, so I'm going to compress to 280 characters. Instead of eating the seeds of the future, let's plant them together. How was that?
Boom!
Damn,
yes.
All right.
You're hired.
And Lawrence, how about you? What's your tweet length response to let's solve our problems on Earth before we spend money on space?
Well, I like to do it with a picture. If you can see this, I don't know if you can all see this, but this is the husband and wife team behind solving the COVID-19 vaccine. These are Dr. Shahreen and Tarekshi. These are their parents were immigrants from Turkey. Started BioNTech, which has people working from 60 different countries. When they're asked about how do you feel about immigration and being discriminated against, they kind of laughed and said, we don't think about who comes from where and what their color is. And we want to think we could never have done this if it wasn't for all these people coming together from all these different places. And this is just an amazing time that all the technology is coming together, and use of supercomputers and use of artificial intelligence and space technology is one more thing to add to the mix. It is a very, very dynamic time, and hope we can all appreciate it because it's happening seamlessly. We can talk about it. We can say there's a process for this, and we should do that, and we should do that. And the truth is, we don't have to do any of that because the world has gotten to the point where there's so much bad going around, but there's also stuff that's just amazing. And we don't even really need to have procedures. We've got organizations that do this as a matter of course. It is now seamless. Incredible.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Well, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Thank you so much to our 4 panelists for being so generous with their time and their expertise. Thanks also to Explore Mars and our sponsors. And we're looking forward to the next conversation. Don't log off. There's another great session coming next. Thank you all very much.
I know.
Thank you.